Good evening, CORA racers. It is Wednesday, August the 7th, a little after 9 o'clock p.m. This is meteorologist Shay Gibson bringing you the latest forecast update to last night's YouTube video that I did. I'm going to do sort of a small consolidated version of this one tonight, and then I'm going to update tomorrow for the final forecast at the Skippers meeting at the Charleston Yacht Club. So let me go ahead and minimize myself here to the corner. Here's the CORA website. You can find the Skippers information, offshore wind and weather for the latest forecast on this tab right here. This is last night's forecast. I went into some great detail about what to look for Friday night. Not much has changed. There is a couple things we need to talk about, but also for the Savannah Cup race, if you're going to register here on this page. It's under calendar. You go down, find the Savannah Cup, sailing instructions, registration, and Regatta Network are there as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Wpc Surface Map. And what's going on here, we have a sort of a tricky situation here in the southeast. We have a cold front that is sort of draped down through the Midlands right now. This is going to try to advance towards the coast tonight, and we see that edging just ever so slightly downslope by tomorrow morning, into tomorrow afternoon. But that front's going to be held inland by Bermuda high pressure that's here offshore. This provides a clockwise flow around it with a southerly flow, and sea breezes build in the daytime, which will help to nudge this cold front a little further inland and keep it at bay rather than crossing us altogether. Now, as we get into Friday night, some of the prefrontal storms may break out ahead of that as we get into late afternoon and evening hours. So we may have some of that to contend with, but as we get into the night, we see the front buckling a little bit. We call this an undulating front when you start to see this waving action. And this front really tries to advance down all the way down past Winyah Bay, maybe near the Santee River area. Weak high pressure fills in behind that. I don't think the front's going to be able to make it here. We're going to probably get a little bit of nocturnal jetting to keep that front nudged to the north just a tad. As we get, this is getting into Friday morning, and as we get into Friday afternoon into the night, we see that front buckling inland again, and then it's holding that way Saturday morning to our north. So it looks like all the models are in fair agreement that we keep this southerly flow going, maybe some southwesterly winds to start the race Friday to deal with maybe a little bit of moderate bump and maybe a little bit of nocturnal jetting in the evening through maybe 11 p.m. and then sliding west. And one of the things I'm looking at here is not only is Bermuda high pressure, it slides to the south, become more of a Bahamian high pressure, but also this Gulf of Mexico high down here can be providing more of a west-southwest flow down below that front. So whichever way the front is aligned is the way the wind direction is going to be closer to it. If we're further away, our winds will line up a little bit more from the southwest, whereas if we're closer to it, the winds will line up a little bit more west-southwest. Now the miles they're kind of flip-flopping on the timing here. If we take a look at some of the readings, I'll just give you from the Fort Sumter front range light, and we'll go to select all. We'll take a look at the model guidance for Friday evening, and what it shows here is the south-southwest sea breeze going through the afternoon to the evening. I'm still holding on my forecast for 10 to 14 knots right about the time of the race. Some of the models are in agreement. The GFS is holding there. The NAM3 is a little bit lower. We could start out a little bit lower than that, but I'm still holding 10 to 14 knots. We get this little nocturnal jetting bump between, I'd say, 8 and about 11:30 p.m. Winds don't really start to slide west-southwest or west until a bit later, early morning hours, sometime between 2 and 4 a.m. I would imagine. And so that's kind of what we're looking for with that westerly flow. The further south you go, that westerly flow may back a little more west-southwest or southwest in time. So that's just the Fort Sumter front range light. If we go a little further offshore, some of the trends lately, we see this sort of a westerly flow early in the morning, just after sunrise, 7 a.m., but more or less southwest overnight with a little bit of a bump offshore. So we're seeing that nocturnal jetting extending all the way out off the coast by a couple of nautical miles, 2 to 3 nautical miles. If we go further out, I want to take a quick peek at the Charleston Edisto buoy and show what the trends were there for last night. At 1 to 3 in the morning, we had southwest nocturnal jetting, 15 knots, gusting up into the low 20s. And so as we get into tomorrow night, we may be looking at something similar, maybe a little less. And as we get into Friday night, let me go back through to here to Friday night. See if I can reload those models. Sometimes this gets a little bit glitchy. We get into Friday evening offshore. We see those winds significantly higher, up near 20 knots according to GFS, and low teens for the NAM3 to get started for the race. So, there again, the further offshore you go, you may encounter a little bit more of a southwest bump going on, but then those winds turn a little westerly with a little bit more aggressive wind field up near the low teens further out there. If we go down to Fripp Nearshore buoy, we'll take a quick peek at that as well. And this one is indicative of showing a westerly flow after sunrise as well. Basically all of these areas are showing the southwest flow down below this cold front. and the position of the cold front keeps it that way even overnight because of the inversion that goes on. So as we get into Friday evening, once again, winds are more south to southwest at the start. They start to turn more westerly around 2 to 4 o'clock a.m. And so even down that way, if the front edges down just a little further down the coastline, we may see those winds line up from the west-northwest actually. So it may be more of aggressive in nature as well, which is why I'm kind of counting on westerly winds to be up around 10 knots. Overnight hours, it'll transition from southwest to west and still hold some modest values, at least until after sunrise on Saturday morning. Now, as we get into Saturday morning, winds will remain west until the sea breeze starts up in the morning hours, and a lot of that will be depending on where the front is placed as well. As far as rainfall, let's take a quick look here. This is Friday morning, and as we get through the afternoon, this is the NAM 12, so this is a medium resolution model. We'll have a much better idea of the rainfall probabilities as we get within 24 hours out or 18 hours out with some of the higher resolution models that capture the precip, and Andy can sort of feed that out, communicate that out when the storms may be, and we can get a better idea. But as far as right now, we're looking at around 4 p.m. We got 5 p.m., 6 p.m. These storms are starting to break up by this time according to the NAM 12 and then fizzling out through the night. So it looks like things overnight will be fairly clear, at least until Saturday day when the heating begins and the thunderstorms start to wind back or build back up again as another front drops down. So it looks okay for the rain, maybe a bumpy start with some storms in the area, hopefully clearing by the time the race starts or soon thereafter. If we get into Swell Heights, let's take a quick peek at, and let me go forward, step, all the way up to the 9th, which is Friday. And the forecast last night, I had about 1 to 2 feet close to shore, and in some areas even just right outside the harbor, maybe a little bit less than that. Your primary swell direction will be from the southeast. Secondary swell may be cutting across the top from the southwest for that bump for the start, so maybe a little bit bumpy. So I'm calling for about 2 feet as you get just out by the jetties and start to make your turn. The big question is which direction is the wind actually going to be. I'm certain it's going to be from the southwest from some angle, at least south-southwest to southwest. So as you begin your attack out offshore, keep in mind those westerlies will be turning at some point in the morning. You may want to head back towards the coastline somewhere around 1, 2 o'clock a.m. and then try to catch that westerly wind and make a straight drive down the coastline. So hopefully that'll help out. But overall, the further offshore you go, the higher the swell height. So when you start to get 4 or 5 nautical miles out, you may encounter 3-foot primary swell from the southeast. And that's going to do it for this update, and I will see you at the Skippers meeting for those of you who attend tomorrow night. Until next time, everyone take care. Good luck on the race Friday.